Next up on the auction block, a stunning painting from the late 18th century, hereby titled Fearmonger's Fog by Kosoko Rebelein. The bidding begins at $100,000. Do I hear $100,000? $100,000. $100,000. Oh, $100,000. Do I hear 105? 105 going once. 105 going. Oh, there we have it again. We get in 105. 105. Do we hear 110? 110. 110 going once. Going twice. 110 to Mr. Jackson in the back. Do I hear 115? 115. 115 going once. Going twice. Sold to Mr. Jackson. And I am your host, Clay McLeod Chapman. Thank you very much for tuning in to tonight's wonderful, wonderful show of Fearmongers. We have two fantastical guests who have written two fantastical novels that I believe personally have melded genres and blended motifs to such an extent that they're the kind of what's it books. That what do you call these books? I'm going to ask them, what do they call these books? Because we've got them here. Author of The Macabre, none other than Kosoko Jackson. Kosoko, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I'm not loving this, like, it's dark already on the East
Mm,
Coast, but yeah.
yeah. But you know what? It is, it's a dark world out there. So even when the sun is shining, it feels a little dim.
That's more.
Uh, Galloway's Gospel, we have here tonight the one, the only, the weird Sam Rebelein. Sam, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm loving the early darkness. My inner Adams is coming out, every time
Adam's
it's
family
gloomy. Yeah, every
or
time it's
Ansel Adams?
gloomy, I'm like, what a beautiful day.
Yeah. We're all East Coasters here. We all exist within the state of New York. Sam, I know you're hidden somewhere up in upstate, which is a very nebulous neck of the woods. Kosoko, are Brooklyn? Am
I'm
I
in New
correct?
Jersey.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah.
There you
Sorry.
go. Hey, if I had done my due diligence and researched, I would have done. I was close. I got the new. I was in
You
there.
you
East
did
Coast.
get, I mean, it's good that I've scrubbed the internet of my current location, so that's a testament to
Oh
my
God, I'm
accountability.
doxing you within the first 5 minutes. Your address is 110 Flatbush. Is that right? Is that
Just flashing across the street.
I'll just put it in the group chat. Okay. Well, both of you guys have books that have come out within the last couple of weeks. And, before the show started, we were kind of gossiping about how it's been such a fucking glut of goddamn books. I mean, genre for sure, but just in general, I feel like there's been a deluge. And I guess I want to start off by just kvetching and kind of asking, like, have we hit a critical mass? Like, are there too many books? Like, I don't know. I'm asking. And they both run to answer the question. It's amazing. Sam,
I was
Kozuko put his mute off, but I'm gonna poke you because you're hiding.
okay. Have we had a critical mass of books? I mean, I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, there's always room for more books. I feel like it's overwhelming as a reader because you can't possibly keep up with it. And it's easier than ever to write books. I think about that a lot when I'm like, oh man, if I was doing this on a typewriter, I would have to rewrite this whole thing. I would have to retype it, but the rate of writing has increased and therefore the rate of publishing has increased. And there is something kind of overwhelming about it. So I don't know. I don't want to be like a total cynical naysayer and be like, it's too much. It's all pulled back. But I'm looking because I'm sitting at my dining room table, and across the table is Joe Hill's new book, and it's 800 pages of epic fantasy horror. And so there is a part of me that I'm like, oh, maybe like we could just pause for a second and like to catch up on some reading. I don't know. Soko, how do you feel?
I like how you were talking about, oh, like in the past, I'd have to use a typewriter. Like that's where your brain went. I have never thought in my life that in the past I would have to use a typewriter to write a book. You just went back to like the 1930s, I guess, for writing books. I think there is too many books because I think it's very easy for people to write books. And I know that's an unpopular thing to say. I think there's a difference between authors and I think there's a difference between writers. And those are two different things to me. And there's
Oh
nothing
my
wrong with
God.
that. I think everybody is a writer. Not everyone is an author, and I will probably get some flack for that. Um, but I think it's like good, right? Like we want more expression, we want more diversity in voices. But at the same time, I think that like quality control on both sides, indie, self-published, traditional publishing has like fallen down the wayside since the pandemic. I think we need to go back to basics. I think books are being churned out too quickly. I don't think there's a reason why we should have 23 books coming out on 1 week, like across all publisher.
Yeah.
Like that just doesn't make sense to me. Like, and then this week there was like maybe 5 books that came. Like, I don't understand. The calendar is there. I just don't
Yeah.
get it.
It's funny. Sam mentioned his typewriter, and you mentioned the difference between writer and author. My automatic kind of like, I suddenly kind of like turn inward and go, oh my God, am I a writer or am I an author? What am I? What am I? Like we're all, we're all kind of like our internal voices are screaming. But I'm gonna use my Victrola later and what? No, what is it? The typewriter. What's a good typewriter?
I like an Underwood.
Underwood. There we
Underwood
go.
is the one that I own. I did own an electric IBM typewriter for a while, and it was the most satisfying thing to turn on because it
Yeah.
was a big switch, and so you would thunk the switch, and then the like whatever you call it, the ribbon spindle thing would pop up and twirl around, and so it was just a very satisfying series of clicks and whirs and whatever, and then it would ding, and you were ready to go.
Do
My
you
Yeah.
computer
collect
doesn't do that.
typewriters or do you just have it for fun?
I have two typewriters just for fun.
Okay.
And it got really old really quickly because you do have to retype the whole thing. So I would type it all beautifully, and then I'd be like, well, now I have to enter this into my actual computer.
Right.
Do you own any typewriters, or what's a fancy antique thing that you own,
Me?
Kosoko? Yeah.
Nothing. I don't believe in old things.
Okay.
If it gets,
Amazing.
if it's more than 5 years old, I'm like, I think I need a new thing. I'm trying to think. I have a bread maker that my mom gave me that's like from like that's really old.
That's
So
pretty classy. Okay.
I was like, I need to get healthier, and she's like, let me send you my bread maker, and I was like, okay. So now I'm like a pioneer woman making bread every weekend.
You actually make the bread. You've
I do
done
make
it.
the bread. Yeah, I make the bread, and then I give my golden retriever gets the first bite, and then if I have my boyfriend's
Oh,
husky over, he gets the second bite.
Oh my
oh my
God, that's
goodness.
amazing. How's the third bite?
The third bite is for me, and that is usually we are still learning how to make good bread. They don't care. They're like, this is the best thing I've ever had.
That's amazing. Um, I mean, I just to put a pin in it and we'll move on, I swear. I mean, the three of us all had books come out within like a couple weeks of one another. And Kosako, the two of us had one that came out on the exact same day. And I
Well,
do worry about the readers. The writers will be fine. We'll find a way. Life finds a way. But I just feel like as a reader, I know I'm personally overwhelmed. As someone who is lucky enough to read things maybe on the ARC front or on the digital front or on the free front, that I count my blessings because if I had to drop $30 for a new hardback every week, let alone for two or three or however many, like people are making choices,
Yeah.
and that that terrifies me. I don't want anyone to be like, I don't want anyone to Sophie's Choice me or you or you. Like they should get them all.
yeah, and can I just say that I got this Joe Hill book for free. I didn't pay the $38 that it
38
will cost.
bucks. Oh my
I got
God.
the arc from my friends at HarperCollins, and same with Kasoko's book because they were like, whatever books you want, and so I kind of like put my Midwestern attitudes aside and was like, could I have these two?
I would
And
have been like, give me 10. Give me just like
well, yeah,
four
kind
of
of on the
them.
way out, then, it's like after an argument, right? On my way out of the office, like going down the elevator, I was like, oh, I could have asked for this one, whatever.
They'll ship it for you. If you get your ARCs and you're at their office, you can just tell them, "Can you ship these for me?" And they'll put it in a giant box for you.
Have you capitalized on your
Oh,
Harper?
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Whenever I go to the office, I'm like, "Show me to your ARC, like little storage area," and I'm just like scraping them into. Also, the Joe Hill book, like at full price, is $42.
Oh my God.
42.
Yikes, you
Whoa.
guys. Well, I mean, but if it's 800 pages, that's essentially three, if not four-ish, not like other books that you could be reading. And I'm saying to myself, do I read the one book or do I read two other books, three other books? Like there's a there's a time like cost-effective analysis that's going on there too. Like 800, that's chunky. Like
Yeah,
anything over 500, I'm like, okay, you know,
the thick
Yeah.
boy. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, but I feel like I've set us down a path of gossip, but it is a wonderful kind of opportunity to talk to you two about it because we're in the trenches and it's scary out here for a writer, let alone an author.
I was gonna say,
Maybe
yeah,
the
or an
authors are
author.
fine.
Yeah.
The writers, we're like I don't know, like we're in the trenches, the foot soldiers. Boom, 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 boom. But let's talk about your books. Because I read both of them within the last couple weeks, and they are bleeding in my mind right now. And what I think is great about having the two of you together is that I do believe both of your books pose a kind of question of like, where do you put this book? Like, where does this book exist on the shelves? And that kind of blending of various genres or different kind of ideas, but creating something so kind of distinct that like it just doesn't matter. These are beautiful books, and they kind of defy easy categorization, and I think that is their strength. That is why I love them, and that is why I wanted to talk to you two about them because I just think it's kind of jaw-dropping and marvelous what the two of you have done with both the Macabre and Galloway's Gospel. So I guess that all said, my first question is where where do you exist on the bookshelf?
Where do you get off?
How dare you?
Yeah.
How dare you two? No, but I wanna I guess like a refined version of the question is, do you ask yourself these questions like, oh gosh, this should like, is there a calibration or a balance of like, I need a little bit of, you know, fantasy, or I need a little bit of horror, or it's gonna be kind of, I'm gonna throw the calibration all out of whack.
I
Kosoko, I'll
kind of
ask you.
do. Yeah. I think so. I sell all my books on proposal. So I do have a little bit of like when I sell my books on proposal, I create like a dust jacket that has like comp titles on it and stuff. So I do think a lot about where I want the book to be on the bookshelf. I don't think it's always very accurate about where it ends up on the bookshelf because I only sell on 60 pages and then the book often changes, as I'm sure many of you know, that a book that you start on your first draft on page 60 is not the same book on page 500 when it's done 5 edits later. So I do think a lot because I think to me, I come from a marketing background. I have 10 years of marketing experience. So I think it's better to write an okay book that is marketed perfectly than an exceptional book that is marketed badly. And so I often try to think about like what are the top three books that this person who reads my book would like and where would it fit on the bookshelf? Not just like, oh, this is fun, but like actually what would be next to it in what section. But we also know that marketing is kind of out of a author's hands and that really falls on the publisher. So it's like a little bit of a catch 22 that I try to release when I'm deep in the writing process because I feel like if you think too much about marketing, it can kind of like cannibalize the creativity.
Yeah, Sam.
I try to think of the full spectrum of emotions and stuff. I mean, when I think back on the things that meant a lot to me as a kid, the speculative things that I enjoyed when I was younger were enjoyable because they could end up being anything. Like an episode of X-Files in the first 10 minutes, that thing could be anything from like a more tropey monster like a werewolf to like a dude who hates escalators, and like and so I like to have that feeling in my books that it could be anything from the fantastical to the very grounded, and to blend genres allows this greater mystery to unfold. It's like, well, what are the tropes that we're diving into? Because they could be across genres now, you know. And so there were pieces of Galloway's Gospel that I pulled from like retelling Goosebumps books that I loved and reworking them into subplots here. And then thinking about like more grounded, sort of like creepy small town narratives and how do you blend those together. But I think the stories that stick with me, and I would wager most people have those two full ends. So you have everything from great and terrible peril and R-rated bloody action and kills to the very light sense of humor, fun, you know, whatever. Because if you have both of those in their extremes, I think both pop much more. You know, it makes the jokes land a little bit harder. It makes the peril feel more perilous because you care about these characters who are having these moments to tell jokes or be a little bit more personable or whatever. So that's the main stuff that I think of. How can you have all that stuff in there so that every beat feels like it, as tense and mysterious as it can be, because it could be anything on this spectrum across genre or whatever.
I mean, to get away from the bookshelf kind of mentality and just strictly the the books themselves, the stories themselves, like, do you think it's gotten, I guess, easier at this point to kind of to write a story, write a novel that kind of exists within kind of multiple genres? That, like, for, all the way back to the adventures of Cavalier and Clay, or maybe something that Jonathan Lethem wrote, like like there was like this moment where, like, oh, we're blending, like, where like science fiction is integrating itself into literature, and isn't that so amazing? And then, like, here comes Stephen Graham Jones, who's been doing it for years, kind of all, in his kind of own quiet kind of place, but like all of a sudden, like, people start paying attention of like this kind of like this merging of genres, and maybe there's a certain kind of like literary kind of mindset to it. Like, is this even, like, should it even matter where it exists on the bookshelves? Like, I know it does from a sales point, but like just from like where we are as a readership, as a culture, like, have stories kind of evolved to the extent that they can blend these things easily, seamlessly, and not necessarily need to be kind of qualified as like horror or mystery?
I think we as a society like to say they have, but I don't think they actually have.
Really?
I think people really want, like they say, I want something that's different. I want something that pushes the boundaries. But then when that thing pushes the boundaries, it doesn't like actually bubble. The cream doesn't come to the top. I think it's the constant conversation. I think it's an equal conversation with like movies and how we talk about how we want more original work at the movie theaters, but then when original work goes to the movie theaters, we don't support original work at the movie theaters. And so I think there's a disconnect between this idea of a genre, which is supposed to be guardrails or guidelines, has become, I think, in many ways a restriction. That has made it for a lot of authors are writing towards tropes and genres rather than leaning towards writing something that's creative and fulfilling. Because going back to it, like there are so many books coming out, it's so hard to stand out that authors are getting less and less chances to have that breakout book. I'm working on something on submission now, and I remember 3 years ago, my agent would put it on submission as it was now, but now we're going through three, four, five, 6 rounds of line edits to make sure it's as great and polished as possible, even though it's just like a 30-page submission.
Wow. So it's getting harder.
I would say so.
Man, I'm okay. Sam?
I mean, I also feel like it depends on the way, the promises that you're making in the premise and the ways that you're making those promises, because I'm struck by what you're saying about film, and that, like, I can think of various films that are attempting to do the same thing and bend genre in similar ways, but there's a way in which one will be effective for me over the other. Like, for example, I was one of the people for whom Lawn Legs by the end did not work, because I feel like the premise establishes and promises a couple very clear subgenre things that the end was just sort of like, eh. Um, And so, and then it completely shifts, and turns into a different subgenre. So I think that that's the key to me, is as long as you're shifting your subgenres, you have to, at the very least, make sure that that emotional arc lands, and that you have both ends of that arc meeting in satisfying ways, which is again why I go back to sort of the X-Files of it all. If like you have someone pursued by a monster, that's a very simple premise, and that monster could be anything, right? And these things have always been blended. I mean, 1984 is literature, but it's science fiction. Same with like I was going to say Burn After Reading, but that's a Coen Brothers movie. Fahrenheit 451. There are so many books that are genre specific that become literature for whatever reason, right?
But
because they're
after the
saying,
fact, is that what you're saying? Like that if they are written within the kind of like, we're giving this the stamp of science fiction, but years later, it's kind of reevaluated and taken away from the genre and kind of elevated as something more.
yeah, because I guess people realize what it's reflecting, and what it's talking about. And so even if it's this fantastical, crazy premise, the fact that those are books that are talking about very real and urgent things makes them something that transcends genre. So I think that's like kind of, and I think that's how like A24 blew up too, because you're making these really out there horror movies that transcend and say something. And so I'm trying to think of a counter example to Long Legs, because I feel like there was another movie that I saw recently that I was like, but this one I love. This one is doing something very similar to Long Legs. It's changing subgenres, but I think it's effective. And I think it's all about landing that emotional arc.
I'm so glad you mentioned Longlegs because I was so disappointed by that movie.
I was so
What
bummed.
what happened to her like prophetic visions that we had in the first third of the movie?
Yeah. I,
It was like
These
the
are
whole thing, like she's like, don't go in that house, and then we never used that ability again.
Yeah, and I'm sorry if you're going to set up a whole Silence of the Lambs, Da Vinci Code bullshit. You got to have an answer for that. It can't just be devil stuff.
Yeah, it can't just
Because
be, yeah.
you know,
guys. You've already poo-pooed authors versus writers. You're shitting on long legs now. You've said that like too many books, like people are getting really mad.
and Joe Hill's new book too
Joe,
expensive.
oh my god, this is terrible. What are we doing? Um, I'll shift away from this, I swear. But like as we were talking about it, I was like, well, what about something like romantasy, which is like a broad stroke, like it is two things together that you love. It's like it's the chocolate and peanut butter of all of your favorite genres kind of getting smooshed into a lovely little kiss. Like is that its own kind of like lane and therefore doesn't count? Or does it?
I think romantasy has always existed. I think we just put a name to it. Like we had romantasy books before romantasy was a thing. Like
Yeah.
A Court of Thorn and Roses was romantasy before romantasy was a thing. I think that Barnes and Noble just realized that they could put everything in a category and then we could have something that we could steer people towards. I think it's kind of like cozy fantasy too, which I don't understand as a genre, but people seem to love it. Um, Genres are a funny little thing. I think romantasy and stuff will ebb and flow, and new genres will pop up, and cream will rise to the top, or it won't. And I think that's just how it is.
Yeah. Um, I want to steer us towards your books. So I'm going to ask a general question to both of you because I feel as if both of your novels do this extremely well, uh, where I feel as if I'm entering into a world that feels familiar on the surface, but then the further into the books I went, the more I realized kind of inflections or details that kind of shift away from my reality into your own reality, whether that's kind of these kind of mythologies or these kind of systems that are in play or, things that exist within this world that are kind of not in our world, but feel as if they definitely bleed into the world of your books. And I guess I'm just saying you've created worlds that feel very, very real, albeit with all of this kind of fantastical, magical, horrific science fiction, cosmic, like things that like are of not of this world. And I guess my question to you is how does one kind of become the architect of an entirely different world that feels kind of like playing parallel to our own? Samuel.
What a good question. I just wanted a place where I felt like I could play. I wanted a place where anything could be possible. My happiest place is this is Halloween. It's that whole sequence of claymation creatures doing their own thing and being spooky and getting along. I wanted Renfield County to feel like that everyone has a bit, and some of the bits affect the plot and some don't, and there are fun things that invite you into the world. Like, not everything is spooky, but some things are kind of fantastically benign. So even though it is a place of terror, there are reasons why you might want to go there, or reasons that it might one day be a theme park. I'm just saying. But I think that's the important stuff for me, that the worlds that we want to spend time in as readers and fans are the ones that have fun draws in addition to all the things that affect the plot. And so I was really informed by thinking about worlds like Middle Earth or Westeros, or even like Hogwarts. I feel like that's a huge part of the difficulty that people have removing themselves from Harry Potter, is that it's such an enticing world. There's so much in Hogwarts that is so delightful, and so it's a hard fandom to move away with. When people grapple with that, I think that's there's so much in that world that is meaningful. And conversely, I think that's why Westeros isn't really sticking around as a world, because there's no reason I would want to go to that fucking place. It's a place of murder and rape and sharp rocks. Like, there's nothing in Westeros that I would be like, oh my gosh, I have to go see that. And so I wanted Renfield County to feel like that there are things that you would want to go experience. Like, you want to go see the sunflowers in Edenville, or go have a meal at Pancake Planet, or whatever. That's the fun stuff to me, to think that it's a landscape of fun things, and some of them are evil and some of them are not.
Probably the most evil thing within Galway's Gospel at Pancake Planet is, in fact, what was it called? The Belgian waffle. What is it? It's the
Okay. It's the chicken Caesar Belgian waffle, and our mutual friends Kat and Tony made it and said it was delicious. So
Okay.
I don't want to hear it.
Fine. The stuff of nightmares. Kosoko, like with the macabre, I mean, it does feel like you've created a kind of like alternate Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy with magic, and it I was reading it, and forgive the Harry Potter reference, but it felt like kind of like a horror fantasy magical espionage romance. If like Clive Barker wrote a James Bond Harry Potter merit mashup, and like just the kind of taking all of these disparate elements but finding a fusion point that uh solidifies. So yeah, I mean, I guess the question to you is this kind of a similar one, where it's just how much architecture went into kind of like the writing of the book for you, of like, I am in essence creating an entire secret service. I mean, they're even called, like, what is it, an arcane service?
Yeah,
Like, it is Her Majesty's, you know arcane secret service to
basically,
me.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spies, but with magic is going to be my pitch for my next book, just so you know. So I will be using that.
Done.
I love spycraft, which is always like I've always wanted to write something magical and spy. Like, I'm from the DC area. There was a time in my college career when I was thinking about working for the CIA,
Ooh.
because then it was the FBI, then it was the NYPD for a very brief moment. And so I always wanted to write something that kind of reminded me of The Magicians meets The Rook, which is like a really good series that I love. And I just love magical spy-based secret societies. And so I thought a lot about like Oh, I read a lot of those like James Bond type books and the nitty gritty of like, oh, this very specific gun and this very specific airplane. And I was like, I don't know all this information. And the best way to insert myself into that would be through magic, because then I can make up the rules myself and make up the layers of society, which is kind of how I approached it. Warehouse 13 was my favorite show growing up on sci-fi, and it was a huge inspiration for this and like the items. I remember there was one specific item in Warehouse 13 that was a metronome that made people immortal based on the metronome, because the heartbeat became the ticking of the metronome. And that stuck with me through for like 15 years, and I still think about that item. And so I always wanted to write something that had like magical artifacts. And so then I was like, but I should focus it more. And so I focused it more on paintings. And this was kind of my like throw balls to the wall book, and kind of it has time travel. It has like globe trotting. It has secret societies. It has magical duels. And I was like, let's see if it all sticks and what doesn't stick. And so that's kind of how I approached it. And I knew that I would need just a strong editor who would be able to help form that architecture. So that's usually how I approach most of my books is I send my agent an email that is basically just a big paragraph with no breaks in it of things that I want to do. And he's like, I think there's a book here, but we have to narrow it down.
Wow, that is astounding. And
Can I ask a
was
question too? Wait,
yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
Are you a Fringe fan as well,
I
Kosoko?
am a
Were you?
Fringe fan. I
Okay, hell
haven't
yeah.
rewatched it yet because I'm always afraid to rewatch things that I love from the. There was that part in Fringe where it's a trope I hate in TV or in movies where someone like switches bodies or places and no one
Uh,
realizes. And there's that
sure.
whole arc in Fringe. And I don't know if I can rewatch that. That was a
Yeah,
rough part.
her other half with even better hair like
Yeah,
took her like yeah.
it's a rough like 15 episodes.
Yeah.
Kosoko, if you could, for the uninitiated, kind of walk us through what the Macabre is about, I'll be very interested to hear your elevator pitch for it.
Sure. So the macabre, it's funny you pronounce the macabre, the macabre, follows Lewis Dixon, who is a prophetic painter who lives in Baltimore, who is going through a really tough time. His mother recently died. His art isn't reaching the way that he wants it to, and he's just not becoming a good artist. And he gets the opportunity of a lifetime when the British Museum reaches out and wants him to be the featured artist from a colony that the Britain used to occupy, which is the United States, but it's actually a ruse. They want him to see if he could enter this painting that is one of 9 paintings from his ancestors called the Macabre, that each have a dark eldritch ability and a dark eldritch past. And the opportunity when he proves that he can enter them and neutralize them shifts no longer to just be in this featured art show, but to become an immortalized painter that the British Museum can make him be if he helps them hunt down these paintings across the world, many of them owned by other countries, some in hiding, some in other nefarious places, while at the same time, an immortal nun who's connected to these paintings is also hunting them down for her own reason.
That is astounding. Um, I I feel as if for me, another thread of what the book does is kind of speak to a personal catnip of mine, which is the cursed objects, the kind of haunted object. And here you have these paintings that each is kind of weaponized or mechanized in such a way that they're very very distinct. And I remember like making I have the list here of like, oh, and this one's called this, and like I won't ruin the surprise of any of these paintings because that's half the fun of getting to each one, discovering each one. But I'm wondering if I could ask, was there a personal favorite painting of yours that kind of rose to the surface?
Yeah, without spoiling it, it's the second painting that we encounter in Australia.
Wow,
That's probably my favorite painting.
it's a good one. um I feel as if it's definitely where the horror like that
Yeah.
aspect really comes to the surface, and maybe that's why I personally responded to it. But I mean, you're speaking to so many different issues. Like I feel like, you know, the notion of art versus the artist, like who's the kind of like ultimately the kind of author of this work, whatever it is, be it a painting, be it something else. But also like colonialism really plays into this novel in such a way that I feel like, given its kind of international uh, globe-trotting narrative, uh, you're also kind of, and I don't know if antagonizing is the right word, but you're looking at it, you're examining it. And I feel like there was great value to adding that thread, that it's not just like James Bond kind of like bursting into a room, taking, or Indiana Jones for that matter. Like, like it's there's a consequence to what's at stake here. And I guess I wonder if it's possible for you to kind of speak to that in any eloquent way.
Yeah, of course. All my books have what I call like a social justice theme to them. I think art is, not to go on our soapbox, art is political. What we choose to include in art, what we choose not to include in art is just as political. And I come from a social justice background. So I've tried to write books that don't say anything. And my editors can pick up on it. They are very much give me edit letters. They're like, what is this book you're trying to say here? It says nothing. And I knew I wanted to talk about colonialism. I had been to the British Museum when I was like 12 years old. And something that stuck with me was how almost everything in the British Museum is taken, and also this idea that like the sun never sets on the British Empire. I thought that was like the coolest thing ever. And my mom was like, no, that's actually a horrible thing. And here's why it's horrible.
Mm.
And I thought it would be interesting to touch about colonialism, the power of colonialism, how it can corrupt nations and people, and not even on like this macro scale of these paintings, but also reflected in how the British Museum manipulates and coerces Lewis into doing what they want to do in their own form of colonizing his abilities. So we talk about colonialism on the macro and the micro scale, and talking about the importance of art. There's a whole theme in this book about the struggling artist, the starving artist, this idea of what happens when art is not prioritized, how taking especially men and putting them into boxes can negatively and pervasively turn them into kind of like monsters, which is essentially what this man becomes. And I thought it would be an interesting theme to talk about that from a lens of like on a global scale, because like you said, we touch almost on every single continent in this book, and we talk about how the British influence, directly or indirectly, has affected everybody. We go to Japan, and the Japanese talk about how we've been around longer and we know how to handle magic. It's just I wanted to talk about colonialism on that scale. So yeah.
Yeah. A line that always pops out to me in the book is it's kind of later in the book, but magic can't be created or destroyed. It only changes vessels. This
Yeah.
idea that it's like this kind of thing that can be kind of taken from you, and that someone else assumes it, consumes it. Um, has art always played a kind of part in your life? I mean, if you're going to the British Museum when you're much younger, like I feel like that's great. Like I'm curious if visual art or painting is something that you personally do, or was it just specifically a kind of aspect of this book?
My dad was a painter.
Oh,
He did like,
wow.
yeah, he did paintings about like birds and like Afrofuturism cultures and stuff like that. So, I have a pretty artistic family, so he came from that side. My sister, before she like rose in the ranks at NASA, did pottery and sculpture. But my mom was really big about culture. So like culture is a big part of my family. So, in high school and middle school, we tried to travel to like a different city in the United States or a different country. So we went to like Canada, Spain, Ireland, France, Mexico, England. I think that was about it. So we did a lot of traveling like that. Art, mm-mm. Art. When I decided to write an art book, I was like, oh shit, you have to research art now. And I was like, oh, I want this book to take place in the like the past is in the 1800s. What art style was in the 1800s? And the Google was like post-impressionism, and I was like, what is that? So we really had to do art 101 to understand art in this book.
Amazing. Well, I mean, you do it adeptly. Like I could not, you could have fooled me. I was like, this guy knows this shit.
See my edit
Um,
drafts, and then you'll see how many times we messed up the art timeline, and that, and then we'll question that.
oh, that's amazing. When did writing come into? I'm going to ask the kind of origin story question then. Like, when did writing come into the fold for you? Like, was that at an early age?
I was 6 years old when I wrote my first story.
Oh,
It was about kindergartners who ran away from home and got eaten by a bear, and then their parents found their bones. And I read it to my parents during the commercial breaks of Wheel of Fortune, and they thought I was mentally ill. Which I am, but like they clocked it early on. I was also kind of like a semi-only child. So I have two sisters who are 16 years older than me. I'm adopted. So I spent a lot of time alone. So I did a lot of reading. I also helped my mom when she ran a nonprofit, and so I would like do the front desk work when I was in high school. And my mom bought me a Palm Pilot to keep me busy with the little keyboard. And I wrote my first novel that was called Dinosaur Kids, and it was about kids who could control dinosaurs. And I thought it was the greatest book of all time. It took me all summer. It was 35 pages. And so I've always wanted to be a writer. And then like fast forward, I flunked out of college. I went back home. My mom was like, "You can stay home, but you got to do something." And I was like, "I'm gonna become an author." And she was like, "You couldn't even pass college biology. Wow, what makes you think you're gonna publish a book?" And I'm also a Scorpio, so I am very stubborn.
That's amazing. Um, I I should know the answer to this, but how many books in are we at this point? This is
People
book.
ask me this question, and I still don't know the answer. We are six published books, and three more under contract.
Wow, that's amazing. That's
A
great.
lot.
Um, I feel like there's a beating heart at the there's several beating hearts in this, but like one real wonderful motor that this book has is a kind of certain will they or won't they kind of tension between a particular pair of characters. And I don't want to give anything away if that's better left off the table. But I guess like I wanted to kind of ask, the kind of not relationship, but the kind of like the the Mulder and Scully of the book and that kind of tension that you do a great job of kind of like stringing us along. Like we're in like I was like page 100. These guys something's gonna happen, and you suspend.
What's the question exactly there, Clay?
How did you do that?
Oh, I was like, it was just like a
I'm just
thought process.
this is
Um, I come from a romance background, I have two rom-coms. So like romance was easy to write, but I was like, I actually didn't have a romance thread when I first started this book. Because I was like, I think we as publishing kind of pigeonhole romance into most genres now. Like every book is like, it needs to have a romance. And I was like, horror is the place where I don't have to have a romance. But then I was like, ugh, I think this book needs a romance. Um,
so you made that choice. That was
I made
your
the
call.
choice. I made the choice. Actually, like after I like got deeper into writing said character that you're talking about, I was like, ugh, I kind of like this character. And so I was
Pretty
like,
likable.
I think they need a romance arc. And the good news was that I was able to put it in the background, which made it a lot easier for me because when I was writing it, I was like, oh, I feel like we have a lagging chapter here. We need an extra 5 or 6 pages. So let's kind of like piece in some romances. That kind of came as the layer and the end to fold it in because I knew I didn't want it to overpower the story. But like love is also a theme of this book. There's a lot of the paintings that are related to love. So I was like, it would be a good mirror to have this in the book in the present time.
Hmm. Well, it works. Um, I was rooting for them all the way. One last thing I want to kind of bring up, and it's a bit of a visual cue. For those of you who have purchased a copy of this beautiful book, if you take off the dust jacket, there's this like, amazing uh, illustration on the opposite side. And I I should have asked you this before we started. I hope this is not giving some surprise away, but whose idea was it to have a coloring book rendition of the cover on the opposite side?
It was not mine. It was not mine. It was my
Are you
editor.
not happy with it? Do you
No,
not
I
like
love
it?
it. No, no, no.
Okay.
It was not like we know like special editions are like the thing that like every author wants, but like not every author gets. And so like I was like, I always ask the same questions whenever I sell a book. Is this a lead title? Does it get a special edition? Would it get into a book box? And I'm always told maybe, maybe, maybe. And I was lucky enough that my editor was like, yeah, I think we could do a special edition for this. I think it's worth it. And I was like, great. Something I learned early on from another author, who I don't remember who told me, is that covers and titles are for the readers, not for the author. So I tend to kind of let that stuff go because my house should support it. And when they were thinking about what should we do for special editions, they were like, of course, we'll have deckled edges because every person loves a deckled edge. But they were like, this is an art book, so the cover should look like a painting. But additionally, like people should be able to paint it. And I was like, well, I don't know how that's gonna work. And then they were like, we have that covered. That's not your job. And that's how this came to be.
It's beautiful, and everybody should get the special edition now because you can make your own version of it. Um, Sam, let's talk about Galway's Gospel.
That's
Um,
all right.
you
Yeah.
know, well, I mean, it's kind of amazing for me because I read a early draft.
Mhm.
I was a beta reader for this book, full disclosure. So I one of the first? Where was I kind of in the process
um,
of development for this?
yeah, my mom is usually the first. My
Oh,
agent and my mom, because she, is. I think she's a great beta reader for my stuff because my stuff is not the kind of stuff that she would ever pick up on her own. And so if she can kind of get through it and it makes sense to her, because she's very like, if she's feeling tricked by the story, she'll tune out. And so we'll tune out of like stories like Seven or whatever, because she'll be like, I thought that the killer was like one of the characters that we already knew, and now I feel tricked because I was trying to figure it out, and blah blah blah. And so like, if she can make it through one of my stories and she doesn't feel that way, and the weird magic system or lore all makes sense to her and everything, then like, then I'm in. But you were a close second. You were
I mean,
like,
that's like I don't know, like God and Country. It's like agent, mom, agent, beta bud. Like I get it. Like I'm happy to be second or third in uh that list.
yeah.
Um, but I mean, what is pretty amazing is that this year alone, the year of our 2025, you have published two books, a collection of stories, and now Galway's. And Galway. I keep saying Galway. I'm murdered both of your titles within the scope of this hour. The Macabre and the Galway.
Yeah,
Um,
it's actually Galloway's Gospel Ray,
G-
is the
Galloway,
full.
Galloway.
Yeah, I say Galloway. Yeah.
Okay, Galloway's Gospel. Um, I mean, you are truly carving out a region of a fictional northeastern uh, vicinity that you return to book after book and that readers return to. And I do want to make a point that regardless of what book you read first, you should read all of them, but each book is a standalone and kind of exists independently of the others. And you don't need to kind of tap into the others, but it does enhance the experience. And I'm thinking of like Winesburg, Ohio, or something that's like a little bit more of a kind of tapestry or mosaic of stories, incrementally kind of building up to something larger than any one given uh, entity. Um,
Mhm.
but with Galloway, what you've done is I feel like you're really pushing us into the deep end of a lot of kind of when I read it the second time, I read it last week just to kind of prepare for this. And a lot of it has kind of remained intact. There are a few things that are gone. But for the most part, like it still exists as it did at the beginning of the year, um, or last year. But I do think what maybe it's because the times we're living in right now. Uh, but I found on the second read there like certain themes kind of bubbled up a little bit more. This idea of indoctrination or maybe even like radicalization. Um, they're handled with a kind of fantastical eye, but the further into it you read, or maybe I read, uh, it was amazing how that kind of cult-like mentality is something that I feel exists in this world that we're in right now. And maybe you put a red baseball cap on it or you don't, but it's there in this book, and I want you to tell me I'm wrong.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think that there's something to be said about writers or authors being so tuned into, because I was an only child as well. I was full only child, no older sisters or whatever. But so I also read a lot, and I think that there's something about spending so much time on your own that like you really get to tune into the stuff and observe, and those are the perks of being a wallflower or whatever. um but I finished this book about a year ago, and those themes felt so prescient then. Finished it before the election and then wrote the acknowledgments after the election. And so in the acknowledgments, got to have a little space to have an author's note and say, like, okay, these themes are really going to be important this coming year now. And so to have all that said and to finish it and then a year later be like, holy shit, I really tuned into that. We talked about that with Wake Up and Open Your Eyes too. Like, I feel like you had similar feelings where you finish the book and then time goes by and the themes only grow. And so you're like, wow, I was really feeling it. But I think something that was fun to play with these characters. It's very short. This cult takes over this small town, and there are the sort of by the end these three sets of characters: the characters who are zealous the entire time, characters who are against the cult takeover but are sort of swept up in it and don't know what to do because they get stuck in this sort of fantastical police state. And then the characters who were supportive and then regret it. And I feel like that's the most important character that I wanted to look into. Seth Brenner, for one, people who are so gung-ho for the first election or two, so to speak. And then by the third one are sort of like, oh, I didn't mean that, and it's too late to take that back. So you are not wrong.
For those of the people listening out there who haven't read it, can you kind of give us the synopsis? What's Galloway's Gospel about?
Galloway's Gospel is about a girl who is in high school in Renfield County. It's a place where strange things have been happening for the last 100 years. Monsters, cannibals, all kinds of weird shit. And it's just kind of a fact of life. One of the most common things that Renfielders will say to each other is them's the breaks. It's just a shorthand of like, I experienced a full X-Files episode and I don't know what to do with it, and I still have to go to class today. So she grows up in this environment. She's in high school in 2009, and she's drawing cute little creatures in her notebook and kind of creates this mythology for them, like these little pigs. If you feed them your hand, and make a wish, they'll poop out magic flowers or whatever. It's kind of cutesy and dumb, and she's just making it up in class. And the kids around her start to believe that it's true because they live in Renfield County, where anything is possible. And the story kind of gets away from her and gets taken by especially one guy who's really starting to twist the story for his own means. And it just spirals out of control. The town loses its mind. 10 years later, this town has been cut off from the world. No one knows exactly what went down there. We have this sort of magical police force called the Renfield County Guard, and they are the sort of men in black. They're taking care of all the monsters and mayhem in Renfield County. And our hero, Rachel Durwood, hears about some of the stuff that went down in this town, and is sort of like, it's a cosmic coincidence. My name is Rachel too. This feels like where I'm supposed to be and the job that I'm supposed to have. And so she makes it her mission to go figure out what's happening in this town before the cult has their doomsday. Somehow something cataclysmic is going to happen in 3 days. And so Rachel Durwood is like, all right, whatever Jonestown event is about to take place, I'm going to go shut that shit down. And it goes from there. Can she do it? Tune in.
It's amazing. I mean, the volley between the kind of all, I think it's what, 2009 and 2019 that like the narrative kind of like goes from Rachel to the other Rachel. But I mean, I noticed this immediately reading Edenville and kind of continuing on throughout the rest of your work, and it's present here. The thing that I think defines your personal writing style, if I may be so bold, is a certain kind of level of uh like it's like a hair away from absurdity. It's surreal but grounded, and it ends up being like there's an aspect of humor to it. What is it, Terry Pratchett? Like there's
Sure. Oh, big influence. I loved Discworld as a kid.
yeah, like something that like feels like this is kind of funny, but like it's maybe quirky, maybe a little bit offbeat. I always feel like I go to Gonzo as a kind of descriptor because it feels unreal, um, and yet it's there. And I feel like this in this book in particular, the kind of the inclination to laugh is almost kind of the second it's out of the mouth, I'm hiccuping because it's like, oh my God, like this is actually dark. Like the humor has consequences, I guess is what I'm
You know
trying to
what?
say.
And now that you say that, that feels very current as well, especially watching our own police state unfold. Like that is how it began. Like I remember 2015, Trump was first on TV talking about the wall, and everyone I knew was kind of like, oh, ha, ha, ha. And it's not a joke anymore, you
Yeah.
know? And there's so many ways in which that's true, that these things feel so absurd. And like to this day, I will see clips of him and so many other people, and I'm just like, this is this would be so funny under any other circumstance, you know.
Yeah.
And so
And you're just waiting for someone to stop it. Clearly someone in charge is going to stop this, and it just never stopped. I mean, there were potential guardrails in uh in this book. People could have said no, 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 no. Rachel
Mhm.
could have, like, even Rachel was like, I want to put the brakes on this, and like it gets away from her, and I feel like uh, that is very reflective of the times we're living in, where it's just like, is anyone seeing what's going on? Like, is anyone else laughing at this? Like, we would be laughing if it wasn't just goddamn scary, because it's the pillars of our society have crumbled into to dust.
Yeah.
Um, but I do want to kind of pay lip service to the kind of various elements that exist kind of tangentially in your book. And you do populate your novel, all of your works, with stories that kind of exist on the periphery of this particular book, but they're there, and there's a moment of like, what was that? It's almost like you kind of see something outside the window as you're driving by, and you're like, wait, did you see that? But it's gone. It's too late. And I'm thinking of stuff like, there's like, it's the folklore of the book. It's the characters or the creatures or the stories, the urban legends that are there for a blink, and then they're just gone. I'm thinking of like the Stopwatch Man,
I
or
was so hoping you would say Stopwatch Man. I
I
loved him.
mean, and that's just a blip. I mean, that's just
Yeah.
one. I mean, there were other cults, drowning cults, that exist. There's the botanist. Like my personal favorite, which is an offshoot of the botanist. Uh, I won't give anything away, but one of the most powerful, terrifying scenes in the whole novel uh, takes place in a house with a family, a couple, and I it kind of reminded me of Jake Gyllenhaal in what is it, Zodiac, kind of going into that house, and you're like, you should get out of this house, dude. Like, there's something wrong here,
Yeah.
and then you realize how wrong it is, and yeah, I guess there's a question here, and the question is, um, you're just throwing this shit against the wall, and a lot of it sticks, but you're just moving past it. You're not even like waiting for it to stick. You're just like splat onto the next thing.
You know what I'm realizing as you're saying this, and I totally did not clock that this is where that impulse to have all those things came from. But it's sketch comedy. It's
Hmm.
I started in theater and throughout college did sketch comedy and improv. Sorry, um, but
Yes,
I
and
yeah, right. And there's something about college improv that like when you're in it, you're like, this is the best. And then you go back and you watch it later and you're like, oh God. But I loved in especially sketch and improv, but everyone has a bit. Like we had a pretty big sketch group at one point, and so we would try to do these group sketches where it's like a bunch of kids around a campfire or whatever. And I loved even if you were one of sort of the extras in those scenes, even if you had just two lines, you would have your own little bit to do, right? Those two lines would be something funny in and of themselves. And that's informed by works like Community, the show Community. There's always fun things happening in the background. Abed has an entire arc in one episode that's completely in the background. Um, they will spend entire seasons setting up jokes. Like they have a great Beetlejuice joke they do over the course of 3 seasons and then never really talk about. And it's again just in the background. That Monty Python, like the Holy Grail, has so many things happening in the background and so many like little bits. So I feel like it's stories like that that I was really informed by. That like you can just see so many things happening, and you're just sort of like, what the fuck? And like, um, even on like a horror level, like Cabin in the Woods was huge for me when that came out. Such a great blend of comedy and horror, and like so many things happening. One of the craziest things to see on film for me at the time was when they do the purge and the elevator doors open, and it's like a 10-second shot of like 10 different elevator doors open and 10 different monsters come out and attack this SWAT team. And there's just so much to look at. And all those monsters have their own unique bits. And so I feel like that's where a lot of the lore and world building came from this, like, just sort of frolicking through, fun things, and making sure that everyone on stage has something fun to do. And like, especially there's a sequence in one of the Preacher comics, where the preacher, what was his name, Jesse, he's like trying to get information out of a homeless man, and the homeless man keeps spitting out teeth. And that to me is very Renfield County, because it's such a simple scene and there's no reason for this character who's only in this scene to have a bit, and yet they like dedicate pages of art to him like spitting out teeth, so that's the kind of world that I love, that just like for no reason everything is entertaining, everything has its own little thing. So Renfield grew out of that for sure.
Um, Speaking of throwing it against the wall to see what sticks, I really want to ask, what do you have against pasta? Like, why are you, what is up with carbs? Like, you're just not a fan.
I mean, it's the high school cafeteria pasta. I don't know. I've always wanted to do a character. I love the idea of a character being bogged down by food gradually as they move through a story. Like write some kind of death at a funeral narrative where like everywhere this character goes, they're like, oh well, don't you want another snack or whatever? And by the end, they're just so full, but like still trying to keep the plot going. So I don't know. I just think spaghetti is one of those foods where like you have it several days in a row, and by the end you're like the acidity, kind of builds up, and it's heavy, and you're sweating. I don't know, man. You know what I'm talking about? Like,
Oh,
you
I know
ever
what you're talking
had
about. I
pasta
know.
5 days in a row, and you're like, oh my god.
No, I can't say I've had it 5 days in a row, but
Okay.
I get the vibe. I get the vibe.
Well, Kosoko nodded, not to blow up his spot, but that's
I know what you mean.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
Um, I do feel like faith and belief systems and religion, uh, but also gaslighting and those aren't the droids you're looking for. Like there's a certain kind of level of belief systems organically insinuating themselves through a group of citizens, people, friends. so that you can kind of see the beginning and the end result of like a kind of before and after, and it's like the persistence of thought. And I won't, I don't want to give away the motor behind it, why it's happening, but it's chilling how in the novel something is just kind of accepted whole cloth within the kind of like a breath of a couple lines of like, you know, these pigs, they'll bite your hand off and they'll poop out flowers, and that's cool. And you're just like, you know, Rachel will have a hiccup of like, wait, what? You like, that was just something silly that I did, and like, no, but no, it's real, it's true. Um, I guess I wanted to kind of speak or ask you about the kind of like, how do you build up something like that, something that like starts off innocuous, silly, but by the end has such kind of grave consequences. They're playing for real, but at the beginning, it's just shits and giggles.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the power of suggestion is strong enough that all you need is a simple nudge at a certain point. I'm fascinated by stories of old seances and old, like, um, you know, so and so projectile vomited ectoplasm, whereas it's just like a towel that they soaked in egg yolks or whatever. Like, I think it used to be easier to pull those tricks. And so that's why I was also interested in exploring that in a place where anything felt possible. You know, the people who grew up in Renfield are already so geared to believe anything that they see. And I think there's an interesting sort of balance happening with that now, because now we have access to so much information, but also so much of that information is misused or miscommunicated or straight up made by AI. And so I think that we're in this weird zone now where we're simultaneously more willing to believe something because we've seen so much, but also less willing to believe something because we know that so much is manipulated by the ways that information is distributed. So that is something that I wanted to play with as well. And then to make these characters as archetypical as possible, that like it's a pretty big ensemble cast, and it's the same ensemble cast 10 years later, which made it feel like two different ensemble casts in one book, which I would never recommend to any writer or author. It was so hard. But that made it feel like, okay, if we're playing with this particular archetype of person, even though something is specifically happening to this character, that indicates that in general, this type of person might react this way to this happening. And so I don't know. I mean, it's like there's something of the 11-year-old at a sleepover in all of us, that the moment something happens, the lights go out, we all scream, no matter what.
Yeah.
And I, not to get, you know, too political or whatever, but I think we see that in big moments like Charlie Kirk's assassination. Like there for a week, there was just that was the nudge where everyone was like, that's the like adult political equivalent of like the lights go out at the slumber party, and we're all like, oh my god, what's going to happen now, you know?
Yeah.
And so yeah.
We'll find out tomorrow, and then the next day, and then the next day.
Yeah.
Last question I want to throw your way. Bit of a throwaway, forgive me, but it is there is a something that's called the Fogmonger's Song. And as it's written, it's there are a few descriptors to it, and then there's just like lyrics aren't necessarily here, but you've written a chant of some sort, and I don't know if this is addressed in the audiobook, but I feel like I've got you here, and I want to know. I'm really curious. Do you know? Have you sang the Fogmonger song? Like, do you know what the song sounds like?
Yeah, I picture it as a nice soothing a nice soothing like, oh, and then you'll notice that it grows over the course of the book. The number of O's and H's grows a little bit with each iteration of the fog. the weirder and bigger it gets as the Fogmonger gets more and more power. The
Okay.
gets, yeah. Were
So
you
that
gonna
was
do it?
no, I want you to do
Okay.
it. That was like day one. I want like 10 years later. Can you can you
Okay.
do
So then like 10 years later, it would be like oh. That's
amazing? Putting you on the spot, man. Thank you for that. I uh I want to bring Kosoko back into the conversation because um I mean, I mean it. I really genuinely mean this. Like, I feel as if you both have created these books that are worlds that feel so lived in and just so kind of rich in detail that I I have to ask both of you, are these truly standalone books? Like, is there the notion of a sequel to these? Like, do you feel like you can kind of spend more time with with either Noah or like is there another Rachel in the mix or another kind of like member of the guard?
I mean, I already have a sequel plan, and I think I have an email
Really?
drafted to my agent in 1 week asking what are the numbers so we can start pitching for a sequel. So I think there's already that email somewhere in my. I'm a big email scheduler, so I think there's somewhere buried in my like 35 emails that are scheduled.
Oh my
One
God.
of those is that.
So you're just waiting for the moment to press send. You're gonna just drop that email.
I have emails scheduled for April 2026. So
why? How?
I do a lot of like freelance contract work, and so like I might have a client who's like, "We're not gonna have money till next year," and I'm like, "Oh, I'll hit you up in like Q2," so that I draft that email then to
Oh my
schedule.
God. Still waiting for that check, guys. Where is it? Um, so you have mapped it out to an
Yeah,
extent. Like there is, I mean, like, oh my God, it screams for it. I mean, like I want the numbers to be there because like I want to go back. Like, is it? I mean, the paintings themselves. i- w- Would there be? You don't have to tell me completely, but like, is there another mission? Is there another?
it would deal with music and a Stradivarius instead of paintings.
Oh my God.
So yeah.
Yes. I'm there. I'm there. Just in the draft, email draft, just add, we've already pre-sold one copy
Yes.
to this guy. Um,
Two.
so
I'll take the other one.
Okay, that's great. We already have two sales, so there we go. New York Times list, here we come.
is it a special edition? Is it a book box? Will Clay and Sam buy it? I think maybe yes, yes. Done. Um, Sam, I mean, I feel like it's kind of a loaded question because you kind of whether you're writing sequels or not, you're kind of expanding the parameters of your region inevitably. So I'm assuming that the next book might be, but I think maybe you would prove me wrong or correct me.
Yeah, I will spoil it a teeny bit and say that Edenville and Galloway both have sort of cliffhangers that I do have stories planned out for. It's going to be hard though, man, because what I would want to do is sort of do the like Marvel phase two, you know? So like Edenville, Poorly Made, and Galloway are like kind of the phase one, but there's some big shifts that happen at the end of Galloway. So the next book that I would want to write in this world would have to kind of be like with the author's note that like you should read at least Galloway before getting into this one. And I think
Mm.
that's kind of a hard pitch. So the one I'm working on now is totally standalone, non-Renfield, and my hope is that that one does well enough that I can write at least one of the phase two books that I really want to do in Renfield.
Just put one Renfield Wood instant, like just like insert just like one botanist beat and or the stopwatch man, and then we'll just know that it's in canon. Like it doesn't
Oh,
have to like
there's knots, and
okay.
I made sure that those are in there. So there's it's in the world in a way. So have no fear. It's all connected. It's all the
All connected.
Rebelverse.
Guys, it's all connected, man. There's a conspiracy out there. There's like all these horror authors. They're just writing books that like exist in one bookshelf, one cosmic bookshelf in the Barnes and Noble. Um, guys, I cannot thank you enough. I'm genuinely a fan of both of your books, and I really I don't know. I just really appreciate you chatting with me about them because I think that to experience these books, you know, readers just need to like you're bringing them out into Muhammad. Like it is like what readers feel like they want versus what they need. Like you're giving them what they need. Like this is the stuff that like exists in a unique, different, uh, completely like original sphere. So, I know like the books. There's just too many books, but I don't know. You're on the bookshelf of my heart. So thank you, guys. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me.
Same, Clay. You're under the seas in my heart.
Yes, I adore you.
Well, um, everybody, we have had Sam and Kosoko on the show. You need to buy their books. They are out there in the world. The Macabre and Galloway's Gospel. Um, these books are there. They are on the shelves. They are on the espionage, romance, horror, fantasy, magical, Winesburg, Ohio, Eastern Coast, New Hampshire, New England, new horror section of Barnes and Noble, which is close to the bathrooms. I think it's like right there. It's like graphic
Right next to
novels
it. Yeah.
and yeah.
Mhm.
Kosoko, Sam, thank you very much for joining us. For those of you listening, really appreciate you tuning in. Bye.